Before we start, maybe a little bit of an intro, because the only thing you got was an email and an invite. And I think it's, since this is the first PE Tid Bits session at Freeletics ever, it would be cool to give you a short introduction into how this all happened. So basically, we have two great speakers today, so Lena and Shimek. Lena will talk about factfulness and will tell us how we're sometimes tricked by our instincts. And Shimek will introduce you into React and tell us about why he's fascinated about this. And how this all happened and how this has been initiated. Basically started with a discussion about how important learning is, how important learning for Freeletics is, and how much knowledge we have as a team, especially as a product engineering team here in the second floor. And knowing that we have a great room here for discussion, knowing that there is a lot of knowledge spread all over the crews, across Scrum Masters, designers, product owners, engineers, we thought, how about creating a session where we could basically share this knowledge, where we could enable colleagues, to inspire colleagues, to educate colleagues, and create a session where there will also be food. So we thought about different concepts in different companies, and they're sometimes called lunch and learn or whatsoever names they have. And we thought, okay, let's try this out at Freeletics. Let's see how we as a team can grow together, can grow as a person, can grow as a team, and basically share the things that we're passionate about within this group. So this is the first trial run today. Again, a huge clap, and thank you to Elena and Shimek, who will be presenting today. And that's basically all of the intro, I think, right?
Yeah, let's start.
We hand over to Lena, who started with the first talk, and we'll hand over later to Shimek and give you a little bit of a break.
So, hello everyone, and welcome to my talk. First question, who of you have smartphones on them? I have an unusual request. Please take your smartphones. We'll need to do some polling today, so if you can, participate. And I would like to open with one question. So, in the last 20 years, the proportion of the world living in extreme poverty, what do you think? Has it almost doubled, remained more or less the same, or almost halved? So, to reply, please go to this link, pollev.com/lenap151. You will see this poll, and please provide me with your answer to this question. Huh? A piece of pizza? So, let's do this very quickly. Please don't Google answers. That's not the point. The point is to get the answers from the top of your head. So, we have 2 results. Let's get some more. 3. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, 10. So, I'll log the results for now. I hope it's somewhat representative of what we think as a crowd. And let's see the answers. So, what do you think the right answers? Good. I think we have a good crowd today. What do you think this number is? 7%. Any guesses? No. Well, this number is a percentage of people on average who answer this question correctly. So we performed quite well, 10 times better than average person in the world. And if you look at the breakdown by countries, here you can see the percentage of people who answer this question correctly, who picked up C, almost half of the answer. And as you can see, even in developed countries like Sweden, Norway, Finland, nobody scored on average better than 25%. And what's interesting, if I were a monkey, and if I just picked up the answer randomly, I would probably be better off. I would answer 33% of the times correctly. So majority of people in the world perform worse than monkeys on this question. So, what's going on here? Hans Rosen, who is a professor of international health and founder of Gapminder Foundation, which is a non-profit organization whose mission is to create a fact-based worldview. And surprisingly enough, this guy also is a word swallower. He asked the same question in hundreds of conferences, hundreds of surveys, and according to the latest results from Gapminder's misconception study, which had 12 questions like that, 80% of the people perform worse than monkeys. And in 12,000 people answered this poll, and one person picked up 11 right answers, and none picked up 12 right answers for the questions like this. So Hans was thinking like, yeah, if I were just a monkey, I would probably perform better than this. So what does it mean? It means that we are systematically get our worldview wrong. We think about world systematically wrong. So something must be going on here. And it really matters because we, as a human beings, we constantly and intuitively refer to our worldview when we make guesses, when we take decisions, when we learn. And if our picture of the world is wrong, our guesses might be wrong as well. So Hans and his two children, in his book Factfulness, tried to explain why, in their opinion, it happens. A short summary of this would be our brain acts as a filter. There are many facts in the world, but we can only process so much. And when we get these facts through this filter, only the most dramatic ones get through. So in his book, he presents 10 basic instincts which basically contribute to the functioning of this filter, which creates an over-dramatic worldview. So I would like you to pick up your phones again and have the same page open. If you don't see the new question, please just refresh your page. And I would like to invite you to answer the next question. Where do you think the majority of the world population live? Is it in low-income countries, middle-income countries, or is it in high-income countries? So let's gather some inputs. So 4 results. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So I'll log the poll now and let's look at the results. So, well, 54% of us picked up the A, low-income countries. And what do you think the right answer is? Yes, B. Well, we still performed better than monkey. It's good. So, it's not much better in the countries, right? The best country, South Korea, picked up the right answer only 39% of the time. And the other countries' performance was worse. And Hans argues that when we answer this question, there is an instinct he calls the gap instinct in the play. As a human beings, we tend to divide things into two sides of the coin, two opposites, often conflicting. And there is usually a huge gap between this. There is nothing in between these extremes. And it leads us to the first big mega misconception that the world is divided into poor and rich. There is nothing in between. But we all know better. And there are different triggers and signs for this instinct to manifest when we compare the averages, when we compare extremes, and also we have so-called view from up here. I would like to introduce you to a tool Hans and Gapminder Foundations uses to explain the world. So according to this tool, all of us, we live on one of 4 levels of income. Level 1 is The level where you earn no more than $2 a day. Level 2, no more than $8 a day. Level 3, no more than $32 a day. And level 4 is everything above. As you can see, every figure represents 1 billion people. So 1 billion people live in extreme poverty on level 1, 3 billion lives on level 2, 2 billion on level 3, and 1 billion, unfortunately only 1 billion, on level 4. And as you can see from this picture, majority of people lives in the middle. And from us on level 4, I assume all of us on level 4, we think, well, Lena, but it's still like the life on $8 a day is not a good life, and I agree. But the point is, on each of this level, there is a huge difference of how people live. So here there are some pictures which capture major part of daily life of people on this level. And the life looks very different. The difference is being not able to send your children to school at all because they have to go collect some water, grab firewood to cook your gray mush, which you will eat every day for your whole life, and a high risk of dying of disease because you cannot afford any medicine. And then the difference is being able to send your children to at least to a primary school in level 2 because they have a bike to grab some water. You can have a gas stove so they don't have to collect firewood, and you can afford some chicken and eggs now and then. And if you go sick, probably you need to spend all of your savings, but at least you won't die. On level 3, you have access to tap water. You can have a basic motorbike to commute to your factory work, and you can start saving some money to send your children to high school one day. And if you go sick, you probably will not go bankrupt. You will have to tap into your savings, but you will survive and you will not go bankrupt. And on level 4, you have all the basic necessities we know. Hot and cold water, cars, you can go eat out, you have a bed to live. So from us, everything below level 4 looks bad, and I agree. But for people living on level 1 to 3, a couple of dollars a day, they make a huge difference. So let's move on to the next manifestation of the occupancy, which is triggered when we compare the averages. So on this graph, you can see average math scores for men and women in the US, and also average income per day on US and Mexico. And when I look at these pictures, what I see is a huge gap. There is a gap, especially on the second picture, right? But what if we look at this data a little bit differently? What if we look at the spreads? How many people respond, how many people are answering, have math scores in this range, and also a spread of people by income level. So what I see on this picture, especially on the left one, there is huge overlap, right? There is no gap. There is a difference, for sure, especially on the second picture. But there is also an overlap. And if you just compare the average, we risk missing these overlaps. And sometimes, as you can see here, this overlap is majority. So when you look at the average, also always look at something else, like a spread of data. The next point is comparison of extremes. So take Brazil, we have a lot of Brazilians. This is one of the most unequal countries in the world. And right now in Brazil, richest 10% of people earn 41% of income. When I read it, I was super angry because it's very unfair and it looks very unjust. But then I can proceed to reading and I saw this graph, which shows that, yeah, the situation is not ideal, but it improved a lot. In the last 25 years, this 41% went down from 50%. And what's more, when I looked at the other picture, how many people in Brazil live on each level? Yes, there is a richest 10%, but look here, majority of people live here on level 3. We are missing them. There is also a tail of people living on level 1, which is really bad, but majority of people live here. And the point when we just focus on extremes, we often focus just here, forgetting to look at this part, at the majority, at their problems. So the fact that extremes exist, it doesn't tell much. The majority is usually somewhere between. So by just focusing on extremes, we risk missing out. So let's proceed to first rule of thumb, how to fight this instinct. Well, to summarize it, look for majority. When you compare the averages, look also at the spreads. Beware when you hear about the extremes, look at the whole picture, and also be very aware when you talk about rich and poor, that we are on level 4 tend to group everybody below us into one big group called poor. But for them, the life is very different. Again, I need to ask you to pick up your phones to answer the next question. What do you think is the life expectancy of the world today? Is it 50 years? Is it 60 years? Or is it 70 years? 6, 7, 8, 10, 12, 15. Wow, we have more people. So I'm locking the poll. Let's look at the results. So, majority of us picked up the answer B, and 47% answered C. The correct answer is no, it's C. So, but now you should get the gist that answers usually are better than we think. What's interesting, when you look at the breakdown of the countries, what Hans noticed in his book, it looks like when people answer this question, the more educated they are, the more ignorant they are. So, the worst performance was with Norwegian teachers. And he argues that here, the other extinct, which he calls negativity extinct, is at play. Things are always bad and they are getting worse. And this leads us to the second mega misconception, which is the world is getting worse. They're going down, folks. But let's look at the triggers and signs of this. We always misremember past. Also, we are suspects and subjects to bad news. And we also have this feeling that as long as the things are bad in the world, it's actually heartless and inhuman to think that they are getting better. So let's start with the first one. So misremember the past. Well, the grass is always greener before, right? But if you look at the data, the life expectancy in the last 200 years more than doubled. And this number is not only for developed countries. This number is average among all the countries. So humanity as a whole moved quite significantly forward. And there is a anecdote in this book about the journalist Joseph Berg. And he traveled in the 70s to rural India and made a photo tour to capture the living of the poorest people in the world. He came back to the same places 20 years later. And he showed people who are living there how they lived 20 years before. And the point is, they couldn't believe them. They said, we were never this poor, you're lying to us. But the point is, they were poor. So, please remember, most things in our world used to be worse, not better. Another thing is selective reporting. I'm sure you know about this, right? We know that the good news are not news. They're boring. So, there is an example of this thing. So, there was a survey in the US about what people think about crime levels. Are they going up? Are they going down? Are they the same? And as you see in the last 25 years, people mostly think that crime level is going up. right? Let's look at the data. It's almost the opposite. Crime level is constantly going down. It decreased from approximately 50 millions to approximately 9 millions, by more than a third. And the point is that we were never as exposed to the news, especially the bad news, as we are today. And since good news are never reported, also improvements are never reported, they are pouring. And also we have more news, so we assume there is more suffering because we see more bad news. So we need to keep it in mind and constantly catch ourselves thinking and being affected by this flood of bad events reported by all sorts of media also. And the last thing, I think this is the most important point to understand. When I was reading this book, I had this constant thought like, yes, this is all good and all, but people still live on these 3 levels, which bad, especially for people level 1. How can I just see that things are getting better? And the point is, that's all true. Things can be bad, but we also need to be aware about direction of change. Is it getting better? Does the policy we develop work or not? And on this animation, we can see a short visualization how we as humanity moved from being poor and sick, this corner, towards being richer and healthier. Those dots are the countries, and the size of the dot is the population size of the country. And as you can see, majority of countries 100 years ago were in this corner. And nowadays, we are all up, and we are closer to the right corner. I hope this is inspiring graphics, and what's important, what's important to understand, I would like to quote Hans on this. He says, I see no conflict between celebrating this progress and continuing to fight for more. It won't happen by itself, and if we lose hope because of stupid misconceptions, it might not happen at all. So to fight your negativity instinct, in short, expect bad news. Remember that good news are not news. More news doesn't equal more suffering. The improvements are always underreported. And also remember, things can be both bad and getting better. I'd like to ask you to pick up your phones again, the last question for today. This graph shows projections of number of children in the world. There are 3 lines, 2 of them are made up, A, B, C. And the question is, there are 2 billion children in the world today. Children between the age of 0 to 15. And how do you think, how many children will be there in the year 2100 according to United Nations forecast? So please pick your choice. 0. Somebody doesn't like children. Yes. So let's look at the results. Okay, so 47% thinks it's 3 billion, and 27% thinks it's either 4 or 2 billion. And guess the right answer is? No, it's C. 0. The number of children will not change. And why did we pick up the wrong answer? Because of the next instinct, which Hans calls straight line instinct. Our assumption that lines go or continue straight. And it leads us to the third mega misconception that the population of planet Earth is just increasing. And the biggest misconception here is the word just. So to demonstrate the point is that, if you look at the population size of humanity in the last 800 years, you see like there was a huge period where it didn't change much. And since industrial revolution, it skyrocketed. And the assumption is like to draw a straight line and it will go forever, right? Well, apparently it's not the case. So the smart folks at United Nations, they have a forecast for that. And they said by the end of the century, we will reach a cap of 11 billion. And then the population size stops growing again. And why is it happening? Well, the point is that there will be more adults, but there will be no more children than there are today. And this is because we reached a new balance. We were living in balance with nature where a lot of children were born, but unfortunately a lot of them died. So approximately the same number were born and were dead. And since Industrial Revolution, we broke this balance. We still had a lot of children, but fewer of them died. But by now, the average family, the average number of children per family across the world is 2, and it's not growing anymore. So we again reach the same balance. And the population growth in the remaining part of the century will be mainly because all these children will become adults. So we should remember that, yes, the line continues beyond what we see, but how it continues, it depends. We need to keep in mind that there are straight lines in our statistics, but there are also S-curves, Dublin lines, Hans slides, so we need to look beyond and be critical and not just assume that the things continue to be the same all the time. So to fight the straight line instinct, you just need to remember lines might bend. And for us as a company who relies on data a lot, I think it's very important things to keep in mind. So there are 7 more instincts besides the ones I presented so far, and my goal here was to provide a sneak peek into a book. And for the rest of them, I would like to invite you to discover on your own. And I invite you to become a possibilist, and to learn what it is, you have to read the book. And before we go, I would like to close with a beautiful piece of statistics as paying tribute to Hans. Unfortunately, Hans died in February 2017 because of cancer, and his book was the last gift to the world. He achieved his mission by writing this book in the last months of his life. And in his book, there is the most beautiful statistic I've ever saw. And I would like to read a quote for you. So the goal of higher income is not just bigger piles of money. And the goal of longer lives is not just extra time. The ultimate goal is to have the freedom to do what we want. Culture and freedom, the goals of development, can be hard to measure, but hitters per capita is a good proxy, right? With a beautiful statistic like this, how can anyone say the world is getting worse? Yeah. So, thank you.